All right. Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the March 15th Tinderbox Meetup. I don't see Mr. Bernstein yet, so I'll just kick it off for us. Typically, what we do is we go around the room and we have new people introduce themselves. I don't see anybody new today. We talk about our
Well, there's
project.
somebody new in your lap.
There is. This is Kobe. So I have been, in the United States, I don't know if it's in Europe, we have a thing called rover.com, which is a dog watching business. So I figured I could make extra money while I sit here and work and watch my own dog by having some extra dogs around the house. So I'm generating a couple $1,000s a month just by having some dogs hang out at my house. Yeah, it's not bad. Yeah. Um, yeah. So there you go. And we go around the room, then we talk about our projects, and we have a theme or guest speaker if we're so able to have one. We did have one scheduled today, but unfortunately, he came down with a stomach bug. So we're going to have that guest speaker on ChatGPT integration, which is kind of a parallel track discussion to what Detlef shared with us last week, by the way, Detlef, which was just freaking awesome. I got my local language model all up and running and was playing with it this week, which is super cool. Can't wait to get your files so I can start training it, which will be cool. So we don't have it. So we don't have our guest speakers. So we're gonna have to wing it today, and let's just talk about what we want to talk about. So, we certainly could, in the preamble part of the discussion, we were talking about installers and some of the issues of what it takes to be able to create, not just, hey, everybody, this is what I'm doing, but hey, everybody, this is what I'm doing, and here's an easily shareable file that you can use to take advantage of what I'm doing. So maybe we have that discussion today on the strategies and tactics, particularly that Chuck and I have been working on. We could have that conversation, or if there's something else that people want to talk about. Mr. Bernstein. So we just kicked things off. Do you have any announcements for us before we move into the discussion?
I do not, but it is March 15th, and it's Tinderbox Meetup with Michael Becker. I'm Mark Bernstein. How it became March 15th beats me. How it became noon beats me. Sorry,
Yeah.
folks, but here we are, and here's Michael.
All right, great. So let's talk. Anybody have any projects they're working on? I have some really interesting ones that I can point out when we're ready. It's more of my own project conundrums that I can discuss. But before we dig into those,
Maybe if you like, as an addition to last week, maybe I can show you how to set up function to schedule events. The thing I did with the show message thingy, so that always it doesn't matter how many messages are there, they all get shown, and there's a little timer in there, and so you have it's really easy. It's a very small function, and I can show it if you like.
Yeah, go for it. Let's start with that.
Boom. Tinderbox. Oof.
And by the way, too, not to be ungrateful, but when do you think you'll be able to share your demo files?
I still had a very heavy workload this week, so it's the first part, the assistant part is ready, but I have to do some documentation so that you can understand my crazy stuff a little bit. There is already a version online, I think. Did I post the assistant? I think so in the forum, but hopefully I will get it ready tomorrow.
Yeah, I haven't seen it. If you have posted it, somebody can point it out. I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, I don't know whether it was the basic ChatGPT stuff or the assistant stuff. And if you work with ChatGPT, I strongly suggest that you use assistants. It's much better than without them.
And by the way, before you move on that, there's something you didn't bring up last week that I was wanting to make comment on. So when I played around with assistants, my understanding is assistants have a really important element called a role. And what you can do is you can specify the role that says you are a marketing manager, you're an grade student.
Yeah.
And so maybe you can call that out, because I think that's that persona, their persona specification in the assistant, I think, is critical.
Yeah, that's a very nice metaphor for describing it. It's you add a qualification person with a specific qualification, and ChatGPT will answer with this qualification. So, for example, you can have several assistants with different backgrounds, and they will give you different answers according to the background they have, and that's really, really powerful.
So by the way, on that note, my wife is a seventh grade school teacher, and she got a homework assignment from one of her students that she basically intuitively knew she didn't write. So the way their school works is she can go back and look at the revisions of the student submissions. And so she went back on a couple of revisions, and the student accidentally copied and pasted her prompts with ChatGPT. And she said, "Okay, this is great, but now can you make it sound like an eighth grade girl?" And why is student, my wife kind of red-handed.
Yeah, it's all with text. It's the same. Like you see a lot of on Instagram, for example, you see many AI generated images or even videos, and you always see something. For example, the hands are on the wrong place, or a finger, six fingers, stuff like that. And with text, you have the same parts. It's really, without knowledge and without human knowledge, it's still, the quality is. And I don't know that remember the name of the girl who made a presentation within our Tinderbox meetings, that she taught about incest problems. That now the AI is using their own material to learn, and this
Ah,
is reducing the quality over time even more. And since even an AI system cannot detect is it generated by AI or by human, this will be get a problem very soon, I think.
yeah.
Okay, let's go into a little bit programming. It's really easy. It's really easy to do it, and you can use the same concept for whatever you like, as a function that runs asynchronous in the background, and do repeats tasks for you every time something has finished, and then it starts over and over again if it needs to. And so the first thing here is, you only have to run it once. It's something I think Chuck just posted about how to transport attributes from one file to another. And this is a function that initialized a new file with everything you need to run this my showstopper function. It's very simple. It creates the needed attributes. It will enter some values for these attributes. And so this is the setup of a function. This is really helpful. And I do it always for all my complexer programming stuff, because then I only need this init function, and then everything is there. If I copy it to a new file, I run my init function and everything is there. That's really helpful. So if you have a complex thing with attributes, um, I don't know, whatever it takes, some nodes, prototypes, you can do this init function, and then it will create everything for you over and over again. That's the first part. Then I'm doing it in the same way as Michael. He was the inspiration for it. That I have those global preference nodes where I store some basic preferences, and I do it. I have several of them. So, for example, this one is for the AI stuff, and this one is only for this showstopper thing. It's very easy. It has one Boolean checkbox: is an event running or is no event running, and it has a timestamp. Both is new. You don't need more. And I store it in this global node. It's like a global variable for me. And then back to my showstopper. And so what's happening? It's really easy. I look into this Boolean is show event on in my G's showstopper node. This one, the global node here. And if it's running, I just go jump out of the function again. I don't do anything. This one will be called on a regular basis in an edict or rule on a node where I need it. And so it always tests, is something going on or is nothing going on? And then there is another function, I go into this one into detail later on, called add new show event. You can call it add new event, and then you do your stuff with it. And this one is, I take the current time, I produce my own timestamp format. You can use whatever you like, whatever you use, and write it down in the show event. No, I set the show event to true. If it's not true, it should run now. And I store the date there, the timestamp in it. And the text of my showstopper thing here, where is it? Here, the text, it stores all the messages. I need the storage for all the continuous messaging. And so they are all inside of the text of this showstopper. And if I add a new event, it will run. If the show event Boolean is already set, it will set it again to true, will make a new timestamp, and that's all I need to add a new event. If this one is called by an addict and the show event is not running at the moment, then it takes the current time, again, the same format as before, and then it looks for a delay. I don't want to run everything immediately. I want to make it to control the time that a rerun will start. I don't want it to run immediately. I want to make a little pause between the next run. You can adjust this. I think the better way here would, instead of putting 6 here, would to have a variable, an attribute in my showstopper Boolean. So this, I don't have to edit the code here, but currently here it's a 6 seconds. And if the last show event is smaller than the current time plus 6 seconds, perfect, then we will run and make a new showstopper. The show text event takes some time to open and close again. That's why I don't want it to make it blinking and too hectic and make this pause there. And then I look into the text of my global here, showstopper, and take the text out of it, split it by line breaks or new line characters. And then I take 2 or 3 lines, whatever you like, not all, because there can be many add new show events. And so the text can contain 20, 30 lines of code or of messages, not of code. And the show event can only show here, this show message can only show, I think, 3 lines or something like that. And so I limit it to don't include too many lines. That's the only thing that is running here. Build it up, show the text, remove those lines from the global, show it, and then I set the show event to true because now it's running again. It's just showing something. And that's all you need. That's all you need. So you need a timestamp. You need a Boolean that something is running or it isn't running. You need the place where you store the messages until something, the show event is free and can show something else. And that's all you need. Here, number of 3 lines, and the same concept, the same architecture you can do for anything that you want to run in a way like this, adding events over and over again. Maybe you know already, and you have this concept already. It's really working perfectly. It's so. For example, you saw it last week. If I would hit this one, if you look on the left bottom area, and I said it, yeah, magic there. New event.
I missed that. I missed the there. What are you saying? Are you showing a show or something?
The show was there.
Yeah, we don't see that.
Okay, sorry. It's just if I, for example, I open 3 or 2.
It could be because your bottom of your screen is cut off. Can you maybe make your window smaller, your Tinderbox window smaller?
Yeah, maybe like this. So we now have to wait until something happens, or I can also, yeah. Sometime, a new
There you go.
event is there, then completed, blah, blah, blah. And now the next message will be sent to ChatGPT, and then the next one, and the next one, and the next one. So I really like this concept of doing it in the background and checking if something is there, or just do it. It's a very basic thing. Just thought you might want to see it.
Yeah, it's awesome. Anybody have any questions?
You all knew it already, don't you?
No, absolutely not.
Just a quick one brought up by Dave, which has been, I think, panned out in the sidebar, but he was asking about the format U. Essentially, the trick that's being played here is to get the time as just a large number of seconds, which is why when we looked at the when we actually selected G showstopper, there was something that possibly looked like an ID number as one of the displayed attributes. And it also explains that if you just subtract 6 from it without saying what the 6 is, which might seem a bit odd, but effectively you're taking a large number and you're subtracting 6 from it, and the large number happens to be seconds. So that's why it all fits. So it all works. And there are indeed, I can think of probably a number of other ways you can do it to get to the same thing. It doesn't matter. The main thing is that's how that works.
Yeah. Yeah. And you see that the numbers here, that's it. It's a unique time stream, seconds since I don't know the date.
1970.
Yeah, okay. I think Chuck, you are really used to timestamps, don't you?
Yes.
Yeah. And so, yeah.
Nice work.
Okay.
Yes, you could have used the notify operator.
Yeah, okay, yeah, that's also a good thing. Yeah.
What is the notify operator?
Uh, you notify time, a headline, the subhead, and that slides a notification to your notification center queue at the time.
And how is that different than show?
Show is within the Tinderbox window.
Yeah.
Notification center are those little pop-ups the system gives you when things happen.
Oh, that's a new toy.
And so that's global. It'll like buzz your phone if you aren't looking at the screen.
So Tinderbox can be in the background. You could be looking at mail or something.
Right. Tinderbox can be closed.
So
No, it can't.
So if I click notify hello world, how does that work?
I believe Mark Anderson will correct me if I'm wrong. It's notify time, headline, and subhead.
Can we pull up a file and try that?
I've posted the syntax in the sidebar because I can't remember off the top of my head. But yeah, and essentially, because I'm on 3 screens here, and oddly,
I can show it to you.
I think basically the notifications normally turn up as a little lozenge-shaped box, top right-hand corner of your main screen.
Yeah, you should see
OS
it.
thinks your main screen is anybody's guess.
I just changed it here to notify, and now I start it again, and it should. Yep. Oh, it was very fast.
Yeah.
Really,
So
really
maybe
fast.
that's why I didn't see it.
It was like whoop, and it was gone. Yeah, and that,
It should be persistent in your notification center, though, right?
Oh, there it is.
yeah.
Interesting. And I see you've got to approve notifications.
Yeah.
Got it. Now it works. Where's I can't get it to work. I'll have to play with that. Shush. All right. I'll have to play with notify. So, anybody else? No? Should we try something new? Okay. Peter, go for it. Oh yeah, you had a separate question, Peter.
Yeah, I was just wondering, can we set is separator to true on the hints, prototypes, templates, and composite folders and still have them behave properly and just use that to hide them from the map view? Or does that break their functionality if we did that?
Hey, stop it.
Say that I have been doing it for quite some time and had no problems. So,
Okay, good to
fine.
know.
and it's very handy because it, first of all, is visually helpful to see that this is not really part of your document, but it's also helpful because it won't show up in map view. So you don't see your hints folder trying to show up in map view, which I can't imagine a reason I want to do that.
Cool. And all right, cool.
Hello world.
All right. So and you can combine the notification with the voice trigger too, which is fun. All right. I'm gonna have to build that into my attributions. All right. So do we have any other comments, questions, thoughts that people want to cover before I ask I want to maybe ask a really arcane question that Mark Anderson and I started with on Thursday that we ran out of time in getting answered. I actually have a question for Mr. Anderson or Mr. Bernstein. So if we're so inclined, maybe we can move to that. All right. So anybody mind? All right. If not, I will go ahead and share my screen. Okay. So in one of my files, I've developed this kind of fun method that uses a macro. So as I talked about earlier, you can generate lists using the template that the library that I developed. So you basically, depending on your the way it works, do I have my HTML template in here? I don't. So for example, just to demonstrate the overall functionality, if I'm looking at oops, no, I don't want to export it. I want to add templates. So if I add, so if I'm viewing a document from typical lists, I can see the typical list. If I'm using my own template, I can actually, let's use this one. I can view that as a list. And then what I figured out was I could actually leverage the macro functionality so that I have my so I have my list children library that I'm using. And so then if I develop a macro where it calls advanced list and I pop over to the macros, you'll see then in here, I'm having, I do a bunch of stuff and then I have the macro call the advanced list template and then feed back to the note the item. So that way, if I'm doing some writing, like in this case of this example, I can call the macro, call a note name, feed the macro the booleans I want. And because macros will ignore anything that you don't feed past as a $sign, I can then use additional flags along the end such that text equals text, flag equals flag, category equals flag. So I actually know what these different false triggers mean so that if I am looking at a particular example like this one, which is a live example, there's the lists. If I go and turn off that flag to false, you'll see that the categories disappear. So I'm able to kind of surgically place lists of notes anywhere within my documents or reports that I'm working on. But I ran across something that was quite interesting with the macro example, in that if I go in and I tweak the template a bit, I think I need to do it here. I'm going to, and this is more of a question for Mr. Bernstein. So if I render the template and I then look at export code, what ends up happening for whatever reason, Mark, is the last UL tag is getting wrapped in wrapped with P marks. And no matter what I do, if I'm doing it just with a standard template, that doesn't happen. It's only happening when I'm using the macro. The macro is wrapping the last UL tag with P marks. And if I'm in Chrome or any other kind of browser or even preview, it works fine. But or kind of fine. What ends up happening though is if I've inserted a list within a stream layer of a document, anything following the list when the UL tag is wrapped with P marks, the list isn't getting closed. So everything below that list gets wrapped up into the list. So what I've had to do is put a shim in that basically tells Tinderbox to turn off, to basically post-process. If it sees that, just replace it with the tag. So that way I'm able to make that wrapping of the P marks go away. But the question is, I'm wondering if there's anything I can do without requiring that shim.
What's suppressing paragraph markup?
What do you mean? What? Nothing's suppressing paragraph markup.
Something is, or
Well, in this case, this list is being this UL lead tag is being generated from my library, and then when I'm inserting this code via the macro, via the string, and I'll just show you the macro. So essentially, the macro is basically calculate the list, and then have the macro return the list. It's inserting those p tags, and maybe that's where that's happening. Oh yeah, I tried to have the macro do the replace there, and it doesn't work. I had to do it in the template. So I'm not really sure.
You've got a stray quotes there.
Yeah, no, I'll fix that. But if I do that, I'll still end up. So I can't do the replace in the macro for some reason. It has to be post-processed in the template.
Well, the thing that I pointed out the other day, so the reason you're getting a tag enclosed in p tags is you forget how or why, so no fault, but the processor is being passed some content it thinks needs to be set up for HTML export. Now the convention is long-standing convention is if you don't want a line that begins and ends with an angle bracket to be treated as a paragraph, you put option space on the end, which is it basically puts a non-breaking space character in, so you don't see anything. And I use it a lot. So nearly all the many inline code examples in ATBRef, if you look at the source, the line appears to start and end with a code and then a closed code element. And if I didn't put the option space at the end, they will be exported. So I think that's what's causing it. Why your code is basically passing that in a sense that makes the parser put the paragraphs around it was the bit I couldn't quite figure out, because it'll be somewhere in a cascade of functions and arguments you're using. So these things.
Well, in the library that's producing this list, there are no p tags. So
there won't be, because but one of the things that you are, I can't remember exactly that code here, but one thing you use quite often for all sorts of perfectly logical reasons is you take the output caret text, essentially the exported text, should I say, of the current note. Basically, you send out and you get back something akin to caret text because you actually want to work on it. And somewhere in that loop of doing that is probably where this is creeping in. It's unintentional. It'll just be that essentially it's unclear to the app quite what that line with that single line with a UL tag is there for.
Can you show me that? Pull up ATB rest file and show me that string so I see a reference of it.
Which screen?
Like an ATB ref where you say the non-breaking space, what does that look like? And then Mr.
I see. Oh well, I'd have to hold on a second. Yep. 2 seconds.
Sorry, my guests are being unruly if you're hearing Darth barking.
We share.
And Mr. Bernstein, it seemed like you had a comment or were attempting to make one.
Yeah, the Tinderbox, when it marks up the text, uh, which includes your caret value expression and some text, adds paragraph markup unless the line begins with the tag and ends with the tag. It figures if it's got a line that's all tags, you probably meant for it to be HTML that you typed in the text by hand, and it doesn't treat that as a paragraph. But it's very easy in macros to emit spaces either before or after what you actually did, because you add a little space that's normally innocuous, but in this case, space matters. So that's likely what's happening. You've got a paragraph that's space or tab, angle bracket, UL, angle bracket.
Got it.
I think I inadvertently got the logic of this wrong. Anyway, there's a line with an option space at the end, and if I look at it in export, sorry, I'll go back again. Right, stand by. Nothing. Okay, nothing up my sleeve. So there we go. So there, after that closed code tag, I think I inadvertently explained it, asked about, face about, but when we export that note, if I find that. In fact, well, here it's actually being exported as a block quote because the line starts with a tab, but that's that's a different thing. But essentially, that would be a P tag if I hadn't have put a tab at the beginning of the line. So I had it the wrong way around. But it's the same principle. Essentially, the app is getting the wrong signal, so to speak, unintentionally in terms of what you intended to do, but it's getting the wrong signal as to what you want that line to do. So essentially, the boring task is to go back over crawl through the logic that's creating that and work out which of the lines is either putting in a space where there shouldn't be one, or should be putting a space where there isn't one.
Okay. I found it. That makes sense. Let me press that again. Got it.
In fact, I mean, it's a useful example because it's a general thing. It's a really nice tell that something that you put into text that you thought you were sending just as HTML code is actually being understood as being text that needs to be further basically wrapped, in this case by paragraph tags, to make it what.
So I don't understand though. Do I want to put I think I have the answer then. Do I want to put a space there, you said, or a tab?
Well, if you want, I've stopped sharing so you can put your thing up if you want to share us, but there will be a point, I suspect, where you are emitting a single closed UL tag.
I figured it out. So let me share. Okay, it's
a moment of epiphany.
No, but in the attempt of making my code pretty to readable, I think that's what it was. So so look here, it's gone. So what I'd done here, and the tell was in the UL tag. So what I had here, oops, just undo. Come on. Right. The tell was here. No, shoot, here. Yeah, so I had that. So I was putting, because I wanted to make the UL tags have line breaks.
Oh.
And so if I remove those line breaks from the code, and then I make sure the template actually has that suppressed, so I'm not doing that, then it's not wrapped, but I don't have the line breaks at the UL tags.
Yeah, there is.
Which is not a big deal. That's interesting. All right.
You can essentially have, nice, sexy looking code or nice, sexy looking HTML layout, but often you can't have both at once because you get into just this sort of thing. Because now you've got almost a third element going on,
Yeah.
which is the prettification you want to stick through, and that, in a sense, unsurprisingly, is confusing the parser. So, pick nice action code, or pick or a template code, or pick nice export HTML. Choose one.
Yeah, but that works out. That makes a lot of sense, and that works out great. And the nice thing about this is using the recursive code that Mark's taught me. I was able to create little sub functions that created the opening and closing tags, so I know that that's only happening in one place in the code. So I was able to go to that specific place to solve the problem based on the way you guys were explaining it. So that's interesting. Whereas before, back in early January when I had that, that would have been in like 7 different places. And now it's just in one. So that's cool. Mr. Bernstein.
Yeah, going back to the very beginning, why did you want to use macros?
Because I wanted to be able to leverage the function and stick that list that I was generating in a specific place within my report. And the only way I could figure out how to do that was to have, I mean, I guess I could have used an include strategy or something of that nature, but the macro one worked for me.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if you've seen something I haven't seen about using a macro instead of a function.
Well, yeah. So for me, well, it is the function. So this is the insight I had is I was trying to figure out, and I've since used that for how am I using it? I'm using this strategy in a number of ways. I'm using it to automate figure numbering. I'm using it to automate footnote numbering, which was part of the inspiration I got from Mr. Anderson. I'm using it to automate then list insertion and in some cases image insertion, but not as much. So if I share this, what this is doing is so on a particular node or template, I've created a number of Boolean models. So if this note is the cover for the list, then I can generate the list and I can turn on and off the Boolean from the cover to determine what I want showing on the list or not. If I say this list is not the cover, then that lets me go ahead and turn on and off what happens on a note below. So you see how this note doesn't have any of the additional accents that I'm putting on the list output, but all these other notes do because I've told the function have the individual note determine which accents are used on the list as opposed to the cover note. And so I've created this kind of Boolean strategy within the function to do that. And then I'm like, all right, what I want to be able to do now is surgically place that list anywhere in my document. So, for example, if I'm writing an executive summary of a document, I can say, as we'll discuss later in the document, here is a subset of our discussion. And so then I was able to figure out that here, if I show the macro, I can preset. So I basically grab what the default values are for that individual note before the function runs. Once the function's done running, I reset them back to what they were. And then here, I'm just saying make variable string equal to the function, pass the ID number of the note, and whether or not it's the cover or not. And so then that way I'm mocking up as if I was actually selecting that. If I'm mocking up as if I was actually selecting this note by able to now doing that anywhere in the document. And it's really cool and it works out really well. And part of the reason why I do that too is another part of my strategy, which I'm particularly excited about if and when we can get the discussion we're having in the backstage about having preview automatically be able to enable an export. That's going to enable me to more reliably teach my classes and present directly out of Tinderbox, because what I've realized is I now essentially can create PowerPoint slides or what would be considered PowerPoint slides by essentially using this methodology, using this include methodology. So that way I can turn on and off the macros and then create PowerPoint and basically slides from my written document or written report using this methodology. So that's what I'm working on. That's what I've been working on, and it's working out pretty well. The only challenge I have, as we've been discussing in the backstage, is sometimes, Tinderbox seems to only push an export of an individual note when it's actually the selected note. But if you have a template processing a bunch of descendants, and the template is post-processing that code, that the template's post-processed machinations don't get exported to the individual files, so then therefore don't show up in preview. Because the template's doing the work, and it's not pushing an export to the file. Maybe Mr. Anderson, you can explain that a little bit better.
Well, Mark may correct me. My understanding essentially is that if we go back, some years to when sort of Tinderbox was a simpler thing and Macs were less powerful, one of the things you didn't really want to do was to run out your whole document just to sort of you change one thing. So export, when you export the document, only exports things that have changed. And the change essentially originally worked off just text, dollar text being different, I modified. And since, I think it's version 8.8, it changed to being that and displayed attributes. The problem comes with some of the, in a sense, the cleverness you're doing, where you're doing all sorts of things. For instance, in an action section, the head of a template where you're taking the output of the document, modifying it, putting it back in again. Now, that's essentially creating a change where you're expecting to see a change in the output, but there's no way under the original system that I can see that the app would necessarily know that it's going to export something different, because the basic inputs that are used as the trigger for that. And I don't know the simple way around it. I mean, the suggestion I've made is something that I think really only a small number of power users, for want of a better term, would want, is something that just says, no, just always export, just bypass the old system, which wants to be on by default because it's actually what most people want and it works. But
Right.
For a small number of people doing complicated stuff where it's anybody's guess when something has changed, that might be a way around it. But that's sort of, I think, a conversation ongoing. And I just make a note that there's a question in the sidebar of another topic.
Yeah, another great example of where that I've run into that is, and it honestly becomes a support problem for me, because people who've used the foundational template that I'm offering come back and say your template's broken, and I'm like, it's actually not. It's just preview's not updating. And the issue is, in academic writing, you have APA style guiding for all APA styles for all of its intelligence. Requires a heading 4 and a heading 5 to be styled in line and in a specific way. And so what my template does is it does that HTML heading 4 and HTML5 styling using CSS. And so when the CSS styles that code, it doesn't actually get exported sometimes, and so therefore it doesn't line up properly. And so then I have to wait or force an export or wait, and then it automatically works perfectly again. So there's
When the CSS styles that code, it doesn't get exported. What doesn't get exported?
Well, what I've just found sometimes is that if I force an export of the files, they'll work. If the document lower down in the descendants has been designated as a heading 4 or heading 5, sometimes that CSS won't get represented in the actual file that's being, and what I'm talking about is in preview. If I'm actually exporting the document, let me use different language. If I'm actually exporting the document, it always works perfectly 100% of the time. Where it's not working is when I'm trying to preview the document from descendants. And so therefore the preview is not refreshing because the template's done some stuff, and that underlying descended file has not actually been pushed to the hard drive. So if I'm doing an export, it works great. But if I'm doing a preview, because that file's not being, a refreshing of that file that's been manipulated by the template is not being pushed to the hard drive, the preview doesn't necessarily always show, as Mark explained. And that's not a problem with the software. It's just a realization of how the software works.
I mean, I think in short, it's just got a lot more complicated than we used to assume as to work out if effectively a page has changed. as Michael said, I don't think that's something to throw back as an accusation against the other. I mean, I think it is just much harder, and in most cases, the present system works. It's once you start to use complicated pages with multiple inclusions and doing sort of processing in the templates as you go. It's I don't really. The sort of thing is the application would have to render the whole page to work out actually whether it's the same page or not, in which case the question becomes moot, which is why the solution might be, for the very few people who need it, is to just have a hidden master switch, probably hidden somewhere behind the curtain so novices don't turn it on. Well, it doesn't matter if people turn it on by mistake, and most Macs now are much faster. But I think the status quo still makes eminent sense, and this isn't a problem that the average person will have.
And another great example of that is, let's say I've created an image, and then I realize there's as I do there's a typo in the image. So I go off and I fix the typo in the image, and then I resave the image with the same file name, and then I go try to re-render it in Tinderbox. Well, Tinderbox doesn't know that externally to Tinderbox that image has been updated because the file name's the same. And so the only way for me to get Tinderbox to re-export that image is to close the file, reopen the file, and then it does a fresh exports. But if the file's not been closed, or if I'm working through that process, there's no mechanism right now to be able to, as Mark Bernstein pointed out, tell it through action code to push an export of that file. And again, it's massive first world problem. It's not an issue. It's just something to be aware of. Yeah. Cool. Anybody other have any? So Mark, did you have any other suggestions? I mean, you asked about why am I doing that? Is there?
Well, Dave has a question. It's a different thing, but actually has a question that we probably could burrow into.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, you're gonna love this, Michael. I'm sure you've done it before in another context, but I've got Captain's Log running, and I don't know how it's going to evolve. But one of the things I've decided I wanted is to be able to tag entries, and I haven't really delved into that yet. But in my conception, is that there would be a note within the file that the text of the note contains just a list of words that are tags. And then I would like to have a function or an edict or a rule that would update an attribute, and there is a tag attribute, as I recall, with that list of items from that note's text, so that I can manage that list in the text of a note instead of adding them in the attribute fiddly thing. So, does that make sense?
You want to show it to us?
I'll show you. I'll show you the little bit I've got. Where's the share screen thing? This supposedly works on my.
It's green at the bottom.
Okay, this supposedly works on the MacBook Pro. All right, so, and Tinderbox, that's Nice Marmot, Captain's Log. There we go. This may just be a window. I don't know. All right, allow. All right, participants can now see your application. Can you see it?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. So what I've done, this is like in this is the actual log. This is the infrastructure support type. So I just created this, and these are some items that I think I'd like to have in a drop-down list. Now, I don't know when that becomes unwieldy, but at first, this is what I think I'd like to be able to choose from in a tag attribute. Now, in a entry prototype, these are the displayed attributes right now. There isn't a tag one, so I need to add that. And I'd like it to be a drop-down list type thing. So where do I go from here, Michael?
I'm sorry, say it again. I got really distracted.
Oh, dogs.
I-
I hear Mark Anderson.
There are two routes. There's the and both of which have a usefulness. So the old-fashioned way was you could make a note per term, because, for instance, one method that Michael uses in the reports, so he uses sort of term extraction. So we've mentioned company XYZ. You might want to have a note about company XYZ, if only to remind yourself what it is. But basically, whether you have a list like you've got here in OneNote, or you have a container with a number of notes with the name, name of the note that is going to be a tag name. Either way, you can basically say if you've got a list or a set, you basically could give your note tags. You could set $tags to be a list of all the words in there.
Yeah.
But that means that when you want to do a query on any note that uses dental, your tags note will show up. So another way you can do it is to use a slightly newer feature, where you can take the contents, the text of the note you're showing us at the moment, make it into a list, and then say $4 tags using the attribute command var action code. You can say, I want the suggested values for this attribute to be this list. Now, when you look at it in the inspector, the tags will all run out the side of the box, but that doesn't matter because you're setting it via code, and you're going to be setting it via this list, so you can see the text in the note. So that's manageable, and that which I think was one part of your problem. The nice thing about the suggested values is when you click on a displayed attribute, the suggested values are shown if they're not used. But when you do a query for used values of tags, they won't show up in the query, if that makes sense. So they'll look as though they're being used because that's the normal way that list is made. So the sort of secret sauce of the suggested thing is I'm going to put it there because I think you need it. But I do know that it's not actually being used.
Yeah.
So you can pick either method. They both work. And pick one. Pick whatever feels comfortable. Does that make sense, Dave?
Kind of. I'm not sure. I haven't seen suggested values in action anywhere.
Okay, if you bring up the inspector on your in front of your window there, right? That's it. Now click on the second box along on the icon bar, and go to system
Or user, doesn't matter.
or user. It doesn't really matter. Pick tag. Put tags in the search box and hit enter.
Whoops. All right, so there's two, NL and tags.
Just tags. That's the one we want. Yeah, just click that one. And you'll notice there's a box that now says suggested.
Okay.
If you put sort of home semicolon vehicle in there, and you now went to any note and open and make tags a displayed attribute.
You may need to hit enter just to make sure it's got.
Oh yes, you might do because some on the yes.
Go back to the inspector.
Michael has just proved his point. Yes. So yeah, just type home semicolon vehicle again and hit enter, so that the edit is basically affirmed as being made.
Okay.
And that you'll normally see this, you see on screen there. If the text is selected, that's giving you a tellback that essentially the job is done. Now, in your note, if you show tags.
So hang on a second. I'm going to put this into. I'm going to move the chat window here. I'm going to add. So this is just regular tags.
Yeah, that's right. Tags plural. Yeah, I mean that's the built-in one.
Right.
This will suffice to show you. Now, if you go to pick one of your notes that uses that prototype.
Well, they should all use it.
Yeah. Okay. So now, if you select the tags line, if you pop open the little window, the little caret right at the end of the line, that little angle bracket at the end of the tags in the table. So select tags in the table again.
Okay.
And you'll see a little sort of chevron right at the right-hand side.
There. Way over there. Okay.
Pop that. Now, do you notice there are now two things there? Now we know, because we only just put them in, that the only thing that is actually putting that in there is the suggested values. It's not being used. There's no tellback to say those are suggested values, but the application is clever enough to know that if you were to say, show me every note for whom the tags has the value vehicle, it would not show you. It would find nothing because actually no note is using it, but it's there in the list. So your list of 20 things could be populated that way. So that might be the way. Then what you'd do is, so going back to your tags note, you'd write some action code, probably an edict, I'm guessing, on that tags note that basically would say it would be for the attribute of name tags in quotes.
Yeah.
for the key suggested. Look up ATB-ref for the exact casing, but basically, and then suggested values equals, and then you would be something like text dot format semicolon.
Okay.
Oh no. Sorry, it's so you need to turn the text. You basically need to join all the lines of the text into a list, and then that becomes your.
Well, actually, no. Real quick before you do that, use a variable so you're not messing with your text right now.
I'm just writing that down to remember.
Right now, but let's do it real quick. Just type var var.
Okay, hang on. Let me get up there.
Colon
Text is so
list.
small.
var colon list. No, it's not no space.
Okay.
Okay, and then you'll say like v list, lowercase v, capital L list equals. And then you
$text dot paragraph list, which gives us a list of all the paragraphs.
All right. Well,
so we don't have to mess around with this. I usually forget these things. We don't have to use format to do this.
Paragraph.
Dot paragraph list, the last one in the list there, in the pop-up.
Oh, yeah. Good one.
Okay.
Semicolon.
And
now we say in the next, we don't need the text dot format line, and we say attributes.
Tags.
Lowercase attributes.
Do I have the $sign after? Okay.
No, just type attribute first. Right now, open parentheses, double quotes, tags with a capital T, double quotes, close parentheses, open square bracket.
Okay.
And the spacing on whether suggested values is with an underscore or a hyphen may just be suggested. Bear with me a second. 2 seconds.
It's just suggested. So lowercase.
It's just suggest. So quotes, double quotes, suggested lowercase.
Double quotes.
So what you're doing here is you're telling Tinderbox to make the suggested values for the
equals vlist
tag to be the list in this note.
So now the equal is inside.
No. So now close the square bracket.
Okay.
So we're saying use the attribute operator on the attribute called tags, and I want you to edit its suggested key, and we're now press an equal sign, and we're going to set the value of suggested to be vlist. So v uppercase L ist semicolon. Right. And when you run that, you should find that an easy way to test that is stay on the current note, go in the note behind, just make tags a displayed attribute for this note.
I gotta get this out of the way. Tags.
And that now select it in there and open the little pop-up at the right-hand end, and we should.
Oh wow, look at that.
Ta-da!
Very cool.
There you go. You're an expert.
That's interesting. Now, the little arrow doesn't appear until you hover over it. A little disclosure thing. So that
no, it's not hover over it until you've activated until you've clicked into the value.
Yeah.
Right. So I click into the value, and I'm not seeing the disclosure.
No, it's there. Basically, it will magically. It's like the room of requirements. It will appear when needed.
I'm just, but I'm as an affordance change at some point. It might be something to look at, but very interesting, very good.
And all so right. that works for essentially, I think, any string based thing. But essentially, the ones you're most likely to use it for are strings, lists, and sets. Don't try it with a dictionary because that's not how dictionaries roll. I mean, I know they're built up arguably as strings, but essentially, and the point being that now you've written this edict, or you could make it a stamp. If you only change it once in a blue moon, you don't even need it to be an edict because you only need to run it very occasionally. But if you were to add or remove some values in that list, and then run the edict again, the suggested list would change. Now, a couple of things to bear in mind is if you had, I don't know, spelt appointment with 1P, and after 6 months of use, you noticed that and you fixed it, you would still need to go and just do a search for all the notes with a tag with appointment with 1P and change that.
Right.
So I only say that because I mean it's obvious after the fact, but there's only so much cleverness in a way that it's fair to suppose that the app is going to do on your behalf for these sort of errors.
Right.
In a world, it'd be nice if it automatically changed, but it doesn't. So the suggestions and the fact that you see them in the list does not mean they're used. And I don't, off the top of my head, think that I don't think there's any way you can tell which suggested values are used and which aren't.
Does
But again,
this avoid the on a search when I search for notes that have these tags, does that avoid returning the actual tags to
absolutely, absolutely. Because the way we used to do this back in about version 4 or 5 was you make a note. The way I remember doing it was I make a note with the name of the tag, and then I make the tag have that value for tags.
Yeah.
Use its name as a tag value. But yes, so all that you get a sort of +1 for every tag you were looking at in your count, and so you put in extra filters into your query. This basically makes it much simpler. Now, obviously, if you've got lots and lots of suggested values, you probably don't want to go and try and read them via the inspector, but you
Mhm.
know how you set them. So
Right,
obviously, you just come back to this note, and that's where you do your maintenance from. And
right.
because you've got a bit of code, when you've done that, when you finish with the maintenance, you update it with that slight caveat that if you've used tags that either are no longer in use or you've changed the spelling of, then you need to make a sort of side note and just go around and do a bit of tidy up afterwards.
Well, and the advantage of having it all in one note in the text is that I haven't really fleshed out exactly what items I want to tag, what things I want tags for. So as they occur to me, I can just jump down to that note, add it, and then make that entry. Plus, this is something that I could assign in Apple script as well. Tag equals, and then as long as it's from the list. Oh, yeah,
If you're doing, bear in mind, I think I'm confident in saying that if you're doing something for Apple Script, you probably will be able to read the suggested values list for the attribute tags via Apple Script, so you can get it in a different way.
okay.
And can I
I,
give you one? Can I give you one more tip, Dave, while we got you up?
Sure, you're echoing, but go ahead.
Can you copy that code you have there right there in the edict? Because I find this valuable to Mark's point. Just copy and cut. You don't need to put it there.
Okay,
Okay.
get it out of there.
Yeah. Just copy it so you don't delete it. Go to create a stamp.
Where's the stamp at?
Under
Oh,
the documents inspector, the little white box, the second one
I've
up
never done stamps, so this is a new
there.
one.
Go to the stamp right there, and then
Mhm.
hit the plus button on the right.
Um,
Okay. And now type OnVisit, capital O and capital V.
in the name,
Yeah. And tags, the space tags.
space tags.
Okay. Now paste that code in there. Hit apply or just hit enter. So it's fine. So we don't have to enter anymore. Now copy that name OnVisit tags. Okay. Now go to hit copy.
I did.
Now go to the number 4. I think it's the properties inspector.
This guy.
Yeah. And click on quick stamp. And there's no UI for this. This is why you have to do it here. And search type OnVisit.
Yeah.
Okay. Now hit enter. Now in the where it says new value,
Mm-hmm.
type stamp parentheses quote, no lowercase s.
Oh. Oops.
Quote paste. No, paste in what was on
Oh.
okay, quote, close parentheses, semicolon, and then hit apply.
Okay.
Okay, so now what happens? Now go back to your note and under political, add another term just for fun.
Okay. Hack.
Okay, now click away from the note and click back.
All right. And then tags.
Okay, now go look at your tags again. Look at the drop down. And if we did it right, hack should be there automatically now because what you're doing is, yeah, there it is. So what you're
Wow, it alphabetizes them. Look at that nonsense.
yeah, because you're using a set, because tags are a set. So what the OnVisit does for you is it'll, for those notes that you rarely interact with, by having it not in the edict, you're not wasting processing power. You're only making that trigger happen when you visit the note.
So I don't have to apply the stamp. The stamp
No.
exists. The OnVisit applies the stamp.
The OnVisit applies the stamp. And so that's one of the reasons. So and there's complications that Mark Bernstein's been explaining to us. But one thing I've asked for is an on remove or an on leave to trigger that. But I understand that that creates a lot of complications. So what you need to do is you make the change you want, click away, click back to trigger the on visit, and then you're good to go.
Okay.
Just picking up, I saw Detlef had answered earlier that you had a similar question. So does this answer your version of it?
Yeah. Oh, I don't know, Detlef.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. That's okay. Yeah, great.
So this is the trick. So I create, because I have so many notes, I like 10,000 notes in some of my files, rather than having literally at this point millions of lines of action code running constantly in the background. I have an on visit for every single one of my prototypes. And so therefore rules and edicts are reserved for really those things that I really only need updating in real time.
One comment is that you use the stamp, but if you didn't want to bother setting up a stamp, you could just put those 2 lines of code into the on visit.
Yeah, you could do that too, but that doesn't give me a lot of space. But my stamps have 20, 30 lines of code. Yeah. Yeah.
Big long thing.
Right.
But sometimes you don't want to, you're doing a one-off in a single note. You don't want to have to create a whole stamp, which then shows up and creates a
right.
Pointing out that it is a simple thing, and it works just like on add, where you can put in whatever code you want, and it will execute it when you do an add to the container. This just does it.
Yep. Yeah, so that's neat. Cool. That was fun. Awesome.
Thank you very much.
Now have on paste to come.
So one thing I will, if you don't mind, I'll share something else, unless somebody else has got something. One of the new templates or installers I'm working on right now is actually part of this. Is it this? No, it's not the list one. It's the other one I'm working on. I'm creating a so a lot of the times that as Mark had pointed out, what I'll do, and I'm actually going to implement this code that we just developed in this file. So here I've got a bunch of terminology that I'm generating automatically on the fly. So if I'm up here on the note and I've got term, person, entity, I've been talking about this now for a couple of years. But let's say if I go here and I type Dave Rogers, all right? I click, and because I'm using that on visit strategy here, if I go down to my hint stamps, I've got on visits for all of my different elements. And what the on visit's doing is it's triggering my create and link note library. So, and I'm passing dictionary terms over to the library whenever I visit a note. And so if I go back to this note now and revisit it, I've now revisited it. I've got Dave Rogers as a person. And if we go down here, you'll see that Dave Rogers has automatically been created in my file and linked. So I'm able to generate now, and then because when I'm writing reports, I'm now able to generate, because of that, I can now generate indexes and glossaries and a whole bunch of other strategies based on the files that are happening in my reports, and all of that happens automatically in the process. Likewise, when I'm doing that kind of work, now that note has automatically been created, I can then tear this off, talk about Dave, and close that note, and then go back to my work. And so I can stay in context as I'm generating my glossary of terms and my lists and all of the things that I use that I then propagate across all of my projects. And then the other nice thing about doing that is then once you've developed your own syntax and own convention, what you're then able to do is copy that list folder over to new Tinderbox files when you want to start a new project, or in my case, when I start a new client, and I've got like industry specific terminology that I also want to be reusing in another file with a new client. All of that stuff is easily ported over because the conventions are all the same. And I'll give you one little more demo while I'm at it. And I can slow down if anybody wants me to. But in the fun of building these installers, So here's like the foundational template I've built. So if I copy this installer over to a new file like this automatically installs the reporting functionality. So now I've got a an article, and so I can easily now set up a new Tinderbox file in less than a second with my standards, my templates, my conventions. But then let's go ahead and play with this a little bit more. Let's say now I want to include into this Tinderbox file my automatic list capabilities. All I need to do is take this installer. Oops, nope, come on. Oops, I just deleted the hints file. Ah, crap, that was hints. There we go. Take this installer, install this, and now what I've done is I've now installed the list the list installer functionality into this file. Now, the one thing I've learned is, and Mark Bernstein's working on this. We're working on the backstage on the update. So in order for this functions library, for all the functions in this library to be initialized, I've got to just slightly edit the note. So that tells Tinderbox there's functions in here that you need to initialize. And this week, I since learned I have to do that with the stamps too. I need to go and click at least one of the stamps to initialize them for Tinderbox to recognize that all those stamps exist. And you'll notice that I'm getting shows where Tinderbox is confirming that it's actually just installed those attributes. So now that I've initialized the stamps and I've installed the installer in this file, I can now go ahead and add Dave Rogers. Hit enter, click away, come back on the visit, and Dave Rogers is there. So I basically, and then if and then the next step is I go to my list one. Where's my list one? That's my basic list. Here's my advanced list. Internal anchors. Here's the latest implementation of my list one. Where is it? I've got too many files open right now. It's my link library. List view. Yeah, okay. So now if I grab my installer for the list view and I go to this file, I can now do the same thing and install the list view functionality. Go to the library, initialize the list view function. And now I've got lists. And so essentially I can start what I'm trying to do here is build up a book writing academic publishing system, and I'm breaking out each of these different kind of core functionalities into these discrete modules that people then, depending on their need, can just simply install that capability into their into their file, and they're good to go. And I've got and the one that I've really enjoyed recently on this view is this one I did it in. Is if I look in my installer, I've got an installer example I've created here. Is I even started doing this for myself. If I look at my installer code for each one, I came up with this trick. Was it in this one? I think I did it in this one. Yeah, was it this one? No, not that one. Try this one. Yeah. So what I did here is I also started realizing that myself, my future self may have defaults that I've created in my own files. So I started creating this convention in my installer that says, grab the existing displayed attributes for a particular note like TBX config, and then add in any of the new attributes that this installer is creating, and then reconstitute the displayed attributes for that note. And so that way, when my TBX config file gets installed, it's additively adding in the new attributes that I need for that particular config node or something of that nature, and not overwriting what may have been customized for that particular file. So that's another thing I've been playing with.
It's probably worth noting. I think this really flags up the shows the point that Detlef was showing earlier. So when you're making all these functions, it's a good idea to actually give them a discrete attribute. Tinderbox doesn't really mind, but the chances of you stomping on some code you wrote 6 months ago that you've forgotten about is much reduced if you create attributes. Also, variables. One good thing that variables have done is it used to be you had to use all of this. Anything you wanted to store, you were carting it around in attributes, and that also tended to come up with odd things when you forgot to clear them out. So by compartmentalizing the attributes you use, if you go down this route of this type of thing that Michael's been showing, that's just another thing to bear in mind.
And what's really cool is this week I had someone show up at my school and said, "Look, I'm a professor. I'm doing some writing. I've been trying to figure out how to write my reports in Tinderbox because I've got Ulysses and DevonThink and all of these other apps. Scrivener driving me crazy. I can't figure it out. I'm just having app overload, and I want it all to be in Tinderbox." And I said, "Okay, let's hop on a call." And so we hopped on a call, and within a total of 3 hours, but part of that was because I was realizing that I needed to productize some of the features that I had in some of my files. So now that they've been productized this week, within 45 minutes, I can get someone up and completely trained on all of this and writing their articles and their reports. And we actually got them set up with with Pandoc as well. So we built a Pandoc installer too. So I'm working on so that way, and so as part of that, and this is where the whole TBX config and the new TBX config elements came into play. I'll show you. Come on, this one. So that the paths and all the elements that that Pandoc needs, these are all now configured so that I can just hand off somebody a Pandoc installer to somebody. And they can be up and running and publishing to Pandoc in minutes. So it's pretty cool. And I was and his reflection when we were talking about that was, what took you 4 years, you were able to teach me to do and have me up and running in an hour, which was pretty cool. And it was really more like 3 hours. And the extra time wasn't a technical problem, but it was more rewiring the brain around incremental formalization and metacognition and the abstraction thinking of what's going on with the inputs and outputs. It was more training the brain than it was actually making the software work. Yeah, Bruce.
So earlier this week, I met with someone who's a published author who has agreed to mentor me through the rest of my book, which is just a phenomenal, coup. However, he had one requirement, and the requirement was that all documents need to come to him from Microsoft Word. So
That's
I
what
had
my
finally
dissertation
gotten
too.
I had finally gotten Microsoft Word off every damn computer. I wasn't going to renew it. It renews in April. And this bloated piece of, anyway. Uh, so it's now reinstalled. And of course, any of you who have tried to reinstall Microsoft know that you have to reactivate it about 4 times before it gets everything right. Um, Here's my question. Okay, Dave, I see that and I thought about that, but here's someone who, I mean, he's been not, 3 of his books have been nominated for Pulitzer Prizes. I mean, I, I don't want to screw up. So my point is, Dave says use Pages. And yeah, for everything else, I would import Pages, but I am afraid to use anything other than Microsoft Word. So
Well,
my question,
just so you know, Bruce, my
yes.
doctoral dissertation chair had the same requirement, and I was like, oh, it was horrible. But yeah, so go ahead, ask your question.
Well, so okay, so I am trying to put. I've gotten so paranoid about all this. I have a huge library folder now on my local laptop, and then I have a backup in Google Drive. I have a backup in iCloud. So I've got 3 versions of it, just to make sure as I've been collecting all my documents. My question is this. If the ultimate output has to come from Microsoft Word, and I'm afraid to use anything else because who knows? He's going to get back to me on my first three chapters in a week. He might want to use tracking. And if he uses tracking, then I'm stuck using tracking in Microsoft Word. I don't dare use something else and try and make it work. What is the best way in your mind for me to take? Well, first I'll tell you what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that I actually offload my chapters from Tinderbox, but keep everything else in there. And that way I have one place for my chapters. I'm not dealing with multiple copies and things like that. But I'm wondering if you have a different thought about this.
So a couple things. One is, I don't know what you mean by offload chapters. Maybe you can clarify that first, and then I'll give you an answer.
Yeah, that the final chapters, sure, they can reside in Tinderbox and I can have a copy there, but the way I've been breaking things, and I guess what I'm saying is that I can do some of my editing. For example, the chronology of certain things is still a question of how much back and forth is necessary, helpful versus kind of messes up the flow of the chapter. So that's actually a lot of fun to do in Tinderbox because as you know, I can just renumber it, I can have it sorted in that manner, and I can keep track of it. But once I'm done with it, then that finalized version just goes into a separate non-Tinderbox folder. If I want to keep a backup in Tinderbox, fine.
Yeah. So
But
what I learned from my doctoral dissertation and my postdoc experience since then,
yes,
as I've been doing this, is um, and since you've learned as well, you want to create as much of your creative work and effort and writing in Tinderbox as possible to that last moment when you have to go to Word with your collaborator. Uh, you will have that post editing in the Word document. What I learned with my doctoral dissertation is the first few revisions, I tried to keep Tinderbox updated, and finally I just died like the goldfish and floated up to the top of the fishbowl and just said, all right, we're just going to finish the work with her in Word. And then once the work was done in Word and had a publishable version, I was able to then use Obsidian as an abstraction to convert my entire Word document into Markdown and then paste that back into Tinderbox and parse it all back in. So I was able to easily get all of those final changes that I had made in Word back into Tinderbox, and I had my final version of my document in Tinderbox. And so kind of going back and forth on that is really powerful. And then we tried it a couple years ago for you, Bruce, but we could now that again I've figured this stuff out. But here's an example of the file I did this week with the gentleman. So within like literally, it was a total of about 3 hours, but really now that a lot of it's been productized, it was in less than an hour. We were able to create an article. It says create draft. So what this create draft function does is it goes down and looks at all the descendants of the article and produces a draft.
Michael, you are awesome.
And
Your draft is ready. Great job.
And it also tells me I'm awesome and my draft is ready. And then once you've done that, you can then go and hit, okay, now I'm ready to export via Pandoc.
Michael, you are awesome. Your file has been exported.
Okay.
Great job.
And now it's telling me my file's been exported and I've done a really good job.
so you're on a continuous reinforcement ratio schedule?
I am. I
have not yet graduated to
I've got
to
a really,
interval.
well, and another one of my installer files I'm working on is an automated affirmations file where you can create a library of affirmations of like 50 affirmations that I will randomly pick from because you want some creativity in there too. So then here is the file we just exported from Tinderbox, right? And I've got some, and this file itself has some formatting issues, but so you can get out of Tinderbox into Word really easily, and then just make some manual tweaks and then hand it off to the guy. So that's.
But as you're saying, well, I'll know in a week. I am so blown away that this person is giving of their time in this way. And, you know, uh, so I don't want to do anything to make life more difficult for him because
Yes.
there's no reason for him to have said yes. It was a mutual friend who introduced us, and I've been getting so much so many different kinds of advice about where to go with the book and do I need an agent and all this. And here's someone who, has been publishing for 35 years and writes novels regularly and ghost writes and book edits. So I feel that I'm in very good hands. Uh, and so, but that one little snag is the whole piece around, when he said Microsoft Word, I said, well, I use Google Docs. I hate Google Docs. Never
Yeah.
learned how to use it. So there we are.
Well, congratulations, though. That's exciting.
It's very much it's so funny having had that occur, and then it's an aside, but uh, a week ago, I spent 8 hours going through family memorabilia and found a treasure trove of letters because I had an older brother, 12 years older, an older sister, 10 years older. They wrote back and forth. And sometimes they wrote about me when I was like 2 years old. I'd never seen this before. So it just was, and it's an added piece for the book. I know I'm way off track from Tinderbox, but it was just such a find. So anyway, so yes, I actually think now that it's going to happen. Uh, Only 30 years working on it.
That's just awesome.
So anyway,
Fantastic.
thank you everyone for indulging me.
Yeah. All right. We've got about 2 minutes left. Any other final comments, observations, ideas, things we want to talk about?
Did you see, Dave, you had put a comment in a while ago. My daughter, I had to step away for a minute. Did that ever get addressed?
What comment?
Didn't you ask, didn't you ask Michael about how to do something
Oh yeah,
that
we did
we didn't
that. We
cover?
did that. Yeah, we
Okay,
made
we did. My
yeah.
apologies. I watched that. Okay.
All right. Well, thanks everybody. Really great. And oh, by the way, one other thing, Chuck, before I forget, let me show you one thing that I've been playing with that you might find helpful for your installers. Is find it in the code. Yeah, right here. And then I'll leave you with this. I discovered the method to get versioning in Tinderbox. So version major, version minor, version fix. And then you can add in some commentary that says, if your version is below this version, then you need to do the manual triggering of the to initialize the libraries. But if you're in Backstage, then you're good to go, and it will all happen automatically. So that's another trick so that way for people that haven't updated to the latest version of Tinderbox or aren't on Backstage, they'll be able to use your installer without you'll be able to give them the right instructions.
Oh, before we sign off, I don't know if you saw it about the time change question.
Yeah, I think it's 3 weeks, the next 2 weeks until the rest of the world's back on.
Yeah, depending on where the rest of the world is. Yeah. Both sides of the Atlantic certainly are out of sync by an hour from usual. So as we're running off, essentially starting on a US time. So anyone who's on the east side of the pond, we're starting an hour earlier until the last weekend. So I think we've got 2 more meetups. 30th of March is when Europe and UK change to summertime. So it's a bit longer than usual because memory serves it's normally about a week, but because these two things essentially different polities working for different needs, there's always a bit of disconnect twice a year. So if you have any meetings with anyone scheduled who's the other side of the Atlantic, Bruce, they will turn up an hour late unless you give them a prompt. If they're if they hadn't noticed. So you might want to just sort of send a little message to ginger them up, make sure they know. Easily missed.
All got to get on the campaign to get rid of daylight savings. The curse of DevOps people.
All right, guys, we hit it. So thank you again. Awesome. Next week we'll do our thing, and then our Jacob, who was sick today, will be doing on the 29th. We'll be doing his ChatGPT stuff for us. So awesome. Bye bye. See ya. That was
Everyone.
fun.